Hello, welcome to Wednesday night. Hope you're excited to jump back into Judges. Those of you who are tracking with us at Brookridge, we started a Daniel series on Sunday. It's really exciting. Going to take us right through until the summer. So we're excited about God's Word. We're excited about community. Men are starting a discipleship group this Sunday, so we're excited about that as well. Lots of good things happening. So yeah, my cat's freaking out for some reason. Do you know how the animals can see something? They have better vision than you do. So they'll be staring at something in the room, and then sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's a large insect. So I don't know which one it is. And so if I seem slightly distracted, that's why. It's because of the animal. All right. Anyway, enough of that. So we are continuing with Gideon. We've been talking about Gideon. I remember the last couple of weeks we talked about the fact that the underdog sometimes wins when you have God on your side. So that was really cool, and a cool story about Gideon and his 300 men. Well, now we're talking about not when the underdog wins, but when the good goes bad. When the good goes bad. No good. No good when the good goes bad. Okay. So, yeah. I don't know what's going on. What is your problem? Speaking of the good going bad, this is usually a very well-behaved animal, and he's not being well-behaved. He's just here. Okay. Oh, man. Okay. So we're going to pick up, if we can, reel it in. We're in Judges chapter 8. So Judges chapter 7 outlined the battle where Gideon and his men defeated the Midianites. Now we're in Judges chapter 8, and we're going to see where the writer of Judges takes us from there. So when the good goes bad. Nope. Okay. Bye-bye. I think one of the worst experiences in life has to be taking a big swig of milk only to realize that it's gone bad. Like you feel the lumps of the curdles before you even taste the nastation of the spoiled milk. What a nightmare. But it's scary when the date on the milk jug is just a couple days past and you don't want to throw it out if it's not bad because milk's expensive. So you're going to give it the smell test, right? And in that moment, you put your nose on it and smell, and it's almost like anticipating a needle, which for me is horrible. When the good goes bad, parents, you find that sippy cup in the back of the van and you don't know how long it's been there and what's going to happen when you open it. I remember when I was a kid, my parents expected my sister and I to eat our lunch every day in order to be able to enjoy dessert-like items later on in the day. My sister went on a streak where she decided to stash her uneaten sandwiches beside and under the seat of the car. Solid plan, except that it was summer and it was not a pretty picture when my mom first smelled, then uncovered the carnage in the back seat. When the good goes bad. So this week and next, we're going to look at a good leader who goes sour. He never really becomes an evil man, but he spoils, and then he ruins his ministry. He ruins life for the people who follow him, and he ruins his kids in the process. We're going to see the effect of Gideon's souring on 3 generations of judges. So it's kind of divided into 3 parts. So Gideon turns sour is chapter 8, verses 1 through 21. We're not going to read them. I'd love for you to go back and read this week, 1 to 21. But here's the synopsis. We left Gideon on a high. He just pulled off the most incredible upset in military history. 300 soldiers. He defeated a massive Midianite army of probably about 100,000 soldiers without as much as a single casualty at his side. Picture the scene of people carrying him around on their shoulders. But he goes back, and as often happens after a great victory, his people are bickering with each other. Like, who gets the credit for this? Who gets snubbed in the credits? So the next chapter opens with him in conflict with 2 clusters of Israelites. The first is Ephraim, a large wealthy tribe in Israel who seems to have had their pride hurt because they got left out. So they reamed Gideon out for not calling them to lead in battle. Second group is a couple of smaller townships called Succoth. Whoever named that town just set them up for failure, by the way, and Penuel, who had just refused to help because they didn't take Gideon that seriously. So the offenses there are similar, but what's striking is how differently Gideon responds to each. So to large, wealthy Ephraim, Gideon responds with flattery. He woos them over. To the smaller towns of Succoth and Penuel, he responds with harshness, actually going so far as to torture their leaders by wrapping them in briars and beating them. So he levels the town of Penuel, kills its inhabitants. His responses are inconsistent and seem based more on what's best for him than what God wants. Gideon needed the tribe of Ephraim because they were wealthy, and he knew he couldn't beat them anyway, so he flatters them to get them back on his side. Succoth and Penuel were weaker than him, and he didn't need them, so he just wipes them out. Maybe the bigger point is that in neither case did he consult God to ask what he wanted. He simply did what he felt like doing based on what he had the power to do. What you're seeing, something's happening in Gideon's heart. So fresh off this incredible victory over the Midianites, he's already forgotten whose battle it was to begin with. He thinks he brought this victory, and his heart has gone sour. He used to say success is joining Jesus wherever he is. Now he's like, success is doing whatever I want. So we pick up the story in chapter 8, verse 22. It says, Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. It's actually a great response on Gideon's part, because God had told Israel they would not need a king because he would be their king. So far, so good. But then if you jump down to verse 30 of chapter 8, it says, Now Gideon has 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. So he has a harem, and he has 70 sons, which is kind of king-like, because only kings in those days had a wife pool like that. Verse 31, and his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he called his name Abimelech. Now, Abimelech in Hebrew means literally, my dad is the king. It sounds like Gideon sees himself as a king after all. Back to verse 24, Gideon said to them, Every one of you will give me the earrings from his spoil. Now he's collecting taxes. Also, pretty king-like. Verse 27, Gideon made an ephod of the precious metal that they gave him, put it in his city, and all of Israel whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. An ephod was the vest that was worn by the high priest into the presence of God when he went in to make requests of God on behalf of the people. So the ephod, per God's very specific instructions, was only to be worn by the tribe of Levi and only at the tabernacle. So Gideon creates his own version of that. So he may not be trying to deny God altogether, but he's put himself in the place of God and taken upon himself privileges that belong only to God. And he's now directing people's attention away from God, which is a huge deal. Remember, we are blessed to be a blessing. We want to point people to God. That is our mission, to point people to God so that people can know him like we do. What's happened to Gideon? His victory has given him a taste for glory. It leads into blasphemy, and instead of being a blessing to Israel, he becomes a curse to them. So now, instead of being the deliverer of the people who taught them to have faith in God, he's become a stumbling block to the people that kept them from faith in God. This fills me with a little bit of fear and trembling as a leader, because maybe no leader in the Old Testament provides a better example of a faith-filled, courageous leadership than Gideon. He led God's people to such an incredible victory, but at the end, he sours and he makes it about himself, and he ends up leading Israel astray. With Gideon, we see something that we have never seen before in Judges. The people fall away from God while the judge is reigning, not after. In every other case, the people fell away after the judge had died. Gideon's generation fell away while he was in power and because of how he used his power. It's like, what if I teach you to believe God for great things, and then after we get there, we make it all about us? What if I become a stumbling block to you? It's a scary thing to be a leader. You see, Gideon's life had some clear indicators that he had made it all about himself. So over the next couple of weeks, like you all listen to me challenge you every week, but you can sit back for a few minutes and let me challenge me and our leaders. When you see these things in your life, you know it's become about you. So these things you do not want to see in your life. Number one, infrequent prayer. When Gideon was desperate for God, he prayed instinctively. Many leaders are type A enough that they pray as a matter of discipline, and that's good. But for somebody who's really dependent on God, prayer becomes involuntary because it comes from desperation. When you really, really comprehend your dependence on God, you don't need discipline. You do it like breathing. And the least disciplined person in the room does not need to be reminded to breathe, right? Hey, you just wanted to check in and see if you're taking breaths today. You got this. No, your body craves air. Breathing is not a discipline. It's instinctive, and you couldn't not do it and keep being alive. So many of you pray each day as a discipline. Prayer as discipline is great, but prayer that grows out of a desperate realization of your need for God's help is better. Infrequent, non-desperate prayer is a sure sign that you're drifting and that you've forgotten God. How about failure to consult others? So not only does Gideon fail to consult God, he doesn't really consult with anybody. I've seen this a ton of times. Leaders become an island. They see themselves on this higher plane that they always know best. They're no longer humble enough to recognize they don't know it all. God can no longer speak with you through other people. When I've seen this, it always destroys. Proverbs 18:1 says, an isolated man seeks his own desire. How about resentment? When everything becomes about you, you resent those who get in your way. You become harsh and cruel to those who challenge you. You can't forgive anyone who challenges or obstructs you because that's an insult to you and your leadership. You just want to come down like a hammer, except for on the rich because you need them. How about materialistic excess? Gideon takes people's money, makes himself a suit of clothes made of gold. I'm not a poverty guy. Like, I believe God likes to give us nice things. But for leaders who've made it all about them, they start to live on this higher plane. They deserve it. They need the newer, bigger, flashier, excessive. How about constant worrying about your name? When it's about you, you're always guarding your reputation. You're building your flat platform. You're elevating your name. Can't handle criticism. You crave praise and you need constant affirmation. These are signs that it's become about you. We've heard stories of great church leaders who have led people to great things, but at the end, they use that success to substitute themselves for God. They put on that ephod. They tried to share glory with God. Remember that God gives success to point people to him. It's a horrible offense for us as leaders. The church is Jesus' bride, not ours. He appoints leaders to bring people to him. Imagine a bride walking down the aisle, locks eyes with the groom. Everybody's watching to see if he cries, because if there's a tear, the wedding and the marriage will be awesome. And then imagine the best man starts flirting with the bride. You'd be like, that is inappropriate. Like, what's he going to get? He's going to get throat punched by the groom. When we make it about me, when leaders make it about themselves, it's an offense to God and it's a disservice to you. We need to be in love with Jesus. And I'll say what I said last week. Christians most often pass the test of adversity. It's the test of prosperity that we fail. When Gideon was small and weak, he depended on God. It was when he got strong that he forgot God and made it about himself. So beware your strengths. Don't bemoan your weaknesses. Beware your prosperity. Successes are the things that turn your heart away from God. Proverbs 30, a couple of haunting verses, verses 8 and 9. It says, give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. Does it mean Christians shouldn't save? No. It means if you do have excess, you should do a couple things. You should plead with God to protect your heart. You should be as surrendered to him when you have much as you were when you were poor and desperate, and be extravagantly generous. Nothing cures the love of money like giving it away. Don't take God's blessing of success in your life and make it all about you. Don't let that good thing that God has done in your life spoil. Gideon accomplished so much in ministry, but what's good I mean, what good is that? If you accomplish a ton of things, your heart spoils, you lose your relationship with God, you lose your joy, and then you spoil your family after you, which is what we're going to hear about next week in part 2. His son Abimelech in Judges chapter 9. All right. So let's remember, we've been blessed to be a blessing. If you've been put in a leadership position and you're leading people, just be on guard. Remember that we are dependent on God and that our lives are meant to show Jesus, to point people to God. Blessed to be a blessing. All right. Pumped for Daniel this Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you all that are part of Brookridge and will be there in person. Thanks for checking in on a Wednesday night. We're praying for our network churches, our network pastors, praying for you at Brookridge. Those couple of you that had surgeries recently, and we're praying for recovery. We're praying for Pastor Anthony Milos, who's been in the hospital for a while with his mom. She's had a rough last couple of weeks, and we're praying for her. And we're just praying that God works in our lives, that he draws us closer to him, closer to each other. My cat's still acting up. I got to get out of here. I'll see you all soon.